Hello girls, I'm just going to provide some support for those people who need it by reading through the activities on this worksheet and commenting. So the first thing you're going to do is to make a copy. So you'll go up to File and you will make a copy and save it. Okay, so what we're looking at is an extract from a book that was written by a priest who was very concerned about the living conditions of some people in London. So these activities are focused on Andrew Mann's The Bitter Cry of Outcast London. The word outcast suggests that wealthier people tended not to care about the poor, tended to think that they were bad, and he was really reacting against that. He was saying, no, open your eyes and see how these people are compelled to live, forced to live. So these activities are focused on Andrew Mann's The Bitter Cry of Outcast London, published in 1883, which was a report on the living conditions of the poorest people in London. As I said, it was produced by a minister of religion, a priest. He had concerns that people were living in terrible conditions. It helps to capture the terrible living conditions of places like Whitechapel. Okay, this source was produced in the 1880s, the time period of Jack the Ripper that we're investigating. Hence, it is a primary source. It was produced at the time of our investigation. So what you've been asked to do is to read the extract from the novel and highlight, or it's not a novel, it's non-fiction, so I'm able to change that. Good. So read the extract from the book and highlight all the words and phrases which show poverty. This is a dictionary that you can use to look up words. That's useful, girls, so make sure that you do that. Tens of thousands are crowded together amidst horrors which call to mind what we have heard of the middle passage of the slave ship. So he is comparing the crowded conditions of London to the crowded conditions of a slave ship, where Africans, people such as Africans, were kidnapped and forced on these ships. Okay, to get into them, so to get into the housing of the people in London, to get into them you have to penetrate courts reeking with poisonous gases arising from sewage and refuse scattered everywhere and often flowing beneath your feet. This is an image of raw sewage, what belongs in the toilet and the sewage system flowing through the streets, flowing into the courtyards around which these big housing blocks were built, and they gave off poisonous gases. This is a terrible image, isn't it? So many of these places were places which the sun never reaches, which are never visited by a breath of fresh air. So the air was bad, it was very polluted. You have to ascend rotten staircases. So you have to climb stairs that are built of wood, very old, and it's rotting, which threaten to give way beneath every step and which in some places have already broken down. Okay, this is dangerous, girls. You have to grope your way along dark and filthy passages swarming with rats. Then, if you are not driven back by the terrible smell, you can enter the dens in which these thousands of beings herd together. Okay, the word den makes you think of a very small, dark place. And the word herd makes you think of animals being herded together. But girls, we're talking about people. 8 feet square is about the average size of these rooms. Think about it, girls. Some people are 6 foot plus. So the height of a person and a couple of feet more, and that is the length of the room. Walls and ceilings are black with filth, which has gathered upon them through long years of neglect. It is coming through cracks in the boards overhead. It is running down the walls. It is everywhere. The windows are half stuffed with rags or covered by boards to keep out wind and rain. The rest is so dirty and obscured that light cannot enter, nor anything be seen outside. Instead of beds, there are simply heaps of dirty rags, shavings, and straw. But for the most part, these miserable beings, people, find rest only upon the filthy boards. So no beds at all. Every room in these rotten and reeking, stinking places houses a family, often two. So you're going to read this and then highlight all the words and phrases which show poverty. So perhaps tens of thousands are crowded together. So crowded together might be a phrase that I would highlight. And then you go through and highlight others, girls. Okay. Next to each of these points that were made in Min's 1883 report, explain how the detail reflects the poverty of a London slum. Okay, let's do this one as an example. In one cellar, a sanitary inspector reports finding a father, mother, 3 children, and 4 pigs. A cellar is a room underneath a building. Normally, they have no light or very little light. And then you've got people and animals, pigs, living together. So a sanitary inspector is someone that visits a building to make sure that the conditions are healthy. For example, restaurants are visited by sanitary inspectors who either tell them that it's legal for them to continue to operate or not. They might tell them, no, you have to fix X or you can't keep operating. So they had sanitary inspectors in the 19th century as well. So I would make the point here, girls, that people who are very poor and have no other place to house animals live together in the one room. Okay? Living with your actual animals, unless they are pets. So these pigs were not pets, girls. These would be animals that they would intend eventually to kill for meat, for food. Okay. We might have a look at one more example and then I will leave the rest to you. Here are 7 people living in one underground kitchen and a little dead child lying in the same room. Did they not have the money to bury that child? So the fact that you've got live people living in the same house as someone who is dead suggests extreme poverty. They are either struggling to find the money to bury that person, or they're not going to find that money and they have to organise something called a pauper's burial, Pauper, where the person will just be thrown into an open grave. There won't be a headstone. They might be buried. When I say open grave, it's a grave where there might be a number of bodies. So bodies from hospitals where people have been poor, there are no relatives to bury them. So there'll be a few people buried and that grave will not be marked. That does suggest poverty, that they've still got the dead child lying. Not even in a separate room, girls, in the same room. And again, it sounds like it's a cellar type of environment. It's under street level, is what underground kitchen tells us. So fill in each of those boxes with your ideas about how that detail suggests poverty, and submit your work through Canvas assignments. That's all for now.